So we heard from established players just beforehand, and it's amazing how well they're doing in business transformation, digital transformation, moving this world of digital travel. My new entrants here, these are people who are actually adopting new business models and starting in the world of digital. Let me introduce them. Furthest away from me is Carl Michel. He's chairman of Vive. He'll explain what Vive is, but Carl, can I describe it as an upmarket Airbnb? Would that be a bit unfair? Okay, good, okay, so you're also staying. Thank you for that. Susie is co-founder of Hotel Bonanza, sitting in the middle there. You'll hear about Hotel Bonanza. It's a new approach to selling hotel accommodation online and being fair to hoteliers. Yes. You'll hear about that. Yes, you'll hear about that. I'll let Susie explain. And last but not least is Saar. Saar is Vice President Research and Development at Feelter. Feelter's a new business that's trying to harness how people feel about businesses and how they trust businesses. Fair summation? Yeah, okay. So 3 new businesses, and as we did in the last hour, we're going to hear from a presentation from each of them, and then we'll ask questions. So we're in the realms of new businesses, and ladies and gentlemen, first up is Carl. Let's welcome him.
Thanks very much. Thank you. Sorry. Well, good morning, everyone. Or I should say, actually, yes, it's just still morning. I want to talk a little bit about Vive and what Vive is. It's been described by Paul generously as an upmarket Airbnb. It's a bit more than that, actually. We're more than a portal. What we are, in fact, is a London home rental specialist. London is the first city we've started in, and what we've done is basically hand-picked about 1,100 homes, which we've accumulated over the last 4 years. We started just before the Olympics, when there was a lot of demand for longer stay rentals in London homes. But it's also, I think, axiomatic to say this is part of a wider societal trend away from brands to more characterful, individualistic accommodation. So people are searching out something that expresses their personality, and for that reason, we've seen a huge growth in Airbnb, and we're also treading gingerly in their footsteps with something that's slightly different, in as much as we're also offering additional service components, which I'll go on to explain in a moment. And our audience is very broad, mostly families and larger groups, but also individuals and professionals, perhaps spending longer in London, looking for something better than a service department. Our locations are the obvious ones. It's sort of the blue splurge across the Thames there, zones 1 to 4, heading out westwards to the leafier suburbs of Richmond, and then quite a lot around the obvious areas of Notting Hill, Kensington, Chelsea, South Kensington, and increasingly now starting into East London. I think we're still quite thin in this immediate vicinity, because Excel doesn't tend to happen except once a year, so it's a bit quiet up here, but we are growing in that area as well. What sort of properties do we offer? Well, this just gives you a range, and the reason I show these photos is twofold. One is to show that it is everything from family homes to luxury penthouses, but also to emphasize something which is increasingly obvious to all of us in the digital space, is that excellence in photography, and as we saw in the previous presentation, videos, is an increasingly important part of the sell process. You have to really relay the content in all its color and detail to consumers in order for them to be able to access it and enjoy it and say, this is something I want to do. So you can see it's a pretty broad range. Typically, just to give you a flavor, our average group size is 5 people. So we're looking mostly for 3 or 4 bedroom places. Vive does differ from a pure portal. Unlike Airbnb, we actually do a bit of selection and auditing, so we check that everything works in the house, that it's not a professional landlord as well, where there's been a lot of criticism recently in the press about Airbnb getting professional landlords in. We also actually vet the people who rent the places as well, because we don't really want to have crazy house parties going in and wrecking these rather expensive, delightful accommodations. So there's a bit of pre-screening going on. How do we pre-screen? Well, we sometimes look on the age profile of the guest, but if it's not so obvious, we can also look on social media just to see if there's any interesting stories that we should be aware of. So there's a little bit of behind the scenes selection going on to make sure there's no issues we're going to have. We also take a security deposit. We then do the meet and greet service. So when you turn up, this goes to the other point, people don't want to wait. They want to be turning up to the place and immediately be greeted on arrival, told how everything works. And then we have a 24/7 customer service team that basically springs into action and deals with any issues they might have during their stay. But critically, and I think this is the subtle difference between the true sharing economy and us, we don't actually see any interaction between the homeowner and the guest. And for many, that is actually what they prefer. They don't really want to know who's renting their place, and equally who owns the place they're renting. So in that sense, we're operating in a rather different space. We're also moving to the corporate sector increasingly. Primarily our business is leisure rentals, but increasingly we're seeing some business users coming in who, as I say, are finding this a rather interesting form of accommodation. So our value proposition is quite simple. We are basically 30 to 50% cheaper than an equivalent service department or hotel, and you're getting a lot more space, typically double the floor area. So worked out per square metre, it's a huge benefit, but it also means you have a much more flexible accommodation format for dining, for living, and generally enjoying it. Our average stay length is about 8 nights. So you can see if you were staying 8 nights in a hotel, how you'd be getting a little bit bored of the menus and the facilities and wanting something a bit more flexible. This is just one of the typical quotes we get. We got loads of them, but it was a sort of, just sums up the sort of positive reaction we're getting. This is actually from a corporate account, Sony, and it's something that suggests that we're on the right track. Value-added services we offer are still being worked on. I mean, it's obviously the meet and greet and the linens and all the sort of bath, toiletries and all the rest of it, and a welcome pack. We do a fridge fill and things like that as well. We also can do airport pickups. We can get a chef organised. We can do flowers, maid services in stay if you're staying for longer and want a more frequent service. Otherwise, we just clean the apartment before and after departure. Why is this model flourishing against the traditional hotel operators? Well, I think we're obviously benefiting from the fact there's huge awareness now of these types of the Airbnb model. People have increasingly used it, liked it, and therefore they're seeing it as a sort of new way forward to have a sort of more enriching experience with lower emotional content. We've had some sort of sharing things in the past where you buy from a total stranger, like on eBay. That clearly this is a much higher transaction value. Typically, our transaction values are in the range of £2,000 to £3,000 per stay. So you want to make sure you're going to get it right. Generation X and Y, our famous millennials, and those a little older, are also more interested in expressing themselves and their personality through the choices they make in the accommodation they stay in. So one of the exciting things is how often people share online and on the social media their experiences, and I'm staying in this really cool place in Notting Hill and this sort of thing. And that actually is a sort of important component of this. You wouldn't probably do that so much with a standard hotel room. I think the other challenge a lot of brands have been facing in the hotel space is that actually it's very hard to develop, execute and deliver a new brand. I mean, the recent Starwood-Marriott merger, I think, now brings 30 brands together. And in the consumer mindset, that's pretty confusing, actually. What does each brand stay for? There's a whole load of overlaps. And the consumer tastes are moving so fast that by the time you've rolled out one of these new formats, tastes may have changed again. So we're in the rather nice and perhaps invidious position of having, in the case of London, 1,100 micro hotels. Each one is subtly different, and as we see the demand shifting to different parts of London or for different types of accommodation, we can adjust our portfolio accordingly. So we think there is a gap in the market as well. You can see the hotel operators, I mean, certainly in London, which is obviously got extremely high RevPAR, if you're staying 8 nights with 5 people, that's 40 bed nights. It's a huge amount of money to be shelling out on a hotel. So there's clearly a gap in the market for larger groups, and that's what we're filling. And then the last point, I think, is simply that we're low capital intensive. We don't actually have to spend money on these places. The money's spent by the homeowners. So the decor is their choice, admittedly. We do a little bit of rearranging of furniture sometimes. But, you know, for a hotel operator to do all those refurbs, constantly refresh and renew the estate is quite expensive and time-consuming. So we get some advantages from that. And I think that puts us in a strong position versus hotel operators. Why do people use homestays? Well, Location is the obvious factor. I mean, because we have 1,100 locations, we can be near almost anything you want, and that is the main reason given by most travellers. For business travellers, obviously, long stay gives that flexibility of being able to use a kitchen or a garden or a living space. For younger Generation Y millennials, it's often cost. And for baby boomers, the sort of Pauls and myself of this group, slightly older, we obviously just want the comfort of a home. Key difference of the Vive model against traditional hotel operators is we have a very distributed operation. It's quite complicated. So it isn't that easy just to do and replicate. We basically, we just, in a hotel room, in a hotel, you can just get your cleaners and maintenance crews to go around in a certain pattern and sequence. We're running 1,100 micro hotels, so the logistics behind it, which is where this is a very much a web-enabled platform, is very critical. We also have no standard room type, stating the obvious. So you actually need, which is the point I made earlier, very rich content to explain exactly the character and flavour of each room and what the local area offers. And this is where we actually can get the homeowners involved to recommend their favourite bistro or their favourite coffee shop and things like that. I've already mentioned the ability to flex. For instance, when we had the World Cup at Twickenham, we obviously expanded radically the space and what we had in that area. But equally, as we see shifts in demand in regions, we can deal with that. And I think the fundamental and the economics at the moment are that we have very low interest rates, so everyone's looking at their home as a key asset they want to monetize. So we don't have to invest in that, we just basically provide the entire digital platform for that to happen. Fight back or accept the new reality? Well, Sébastien Bazin, the CEO of Accor, who actually only yesterday bought into 25 Hours, I think I saw, but he, earlier this year in April, in fact, he bought our main competitor, One Fine Stay, for 148 million euros, and I think that's highly indicative of the importance he and certain other operators attach to this space. The sharing economy is coming, and you have to embrace it. Conclusions. I've said at the start, I'm not sure if this is a pure sharing economy because you don't actually, the homeowners and the guests don't actually meet, but it is about creating a technology-enabled platform to facilitate peer-to-peer transactions. Sounds a bit less sexy. Maybe we should just call it the sharing economy for simplicity, but I think you can get the distinction there. I think as social norms change, renting out your home is seen as quite an acceptable thing to do, not something that you sort of have to be ashamed about. In fact, some people are quite excited about getting favourable reviews from total strangers about the quality of the decor and the choice of furnishings and fittings. It's quite interesting how they seek social validation in that sense. And I think people in the hotel, vacation rental and serviced accommodation space are also, Accor being the principal case in point, seeing that this is an interesting brand extension for them. They can offer these sorts of accommodations in addition to their brands and leverage their multi-distribution capability towards that. So at the end of the day, as everything in this industry, it's about the consumer decides, and there seem to be enough consumers deciding precisely for this sort of thing. So that's all on my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Carl. And just a reminder, everybody, if you don't want to take notes about presentations, just leave your business card when you leave, and I'll email you when the presentations are online. So our next speaker, also starting a new business, let's welcome Susie from Hotel Bonanza.
Hi, I'm Susie. I'm the co-founder of Hotel Bonanza. We are a new OTA that will be reducing commission to a fixed rate of 8% and will be offering consumers a membership scheme that gives them a discount on every room they book. We launched to the industry 4.5 months ago, and we've signed up well over 6,000 properties so far, a number that's rising by the day and encompassing every accommodation type. We are going to have a soft launch across the UK and Ireland in January. That will be to iron out any bugs and add in new features. And then we plan to roll out the rest of Europe, Australia, New Zealand, the US and Canada in the first few months of 2017. We plan to have an official launch in the spring, official consumer launch in the spring, and we want to be worldwide by 2018. Our mission is simple. We want to create a fairer model for everybody, and I'm going to explain the reasons that we've set up Hotel Bonanza, how we intend to bring consumers to our site, and some of the main challenges we've faced along the way. To give you a bit of background, the idea for Hotel Bonanza came about 6 years ago. I was a freelance journalist at the time, and I was helping my partner look after the rates and availability in his London hotel. I'm going to use my experiences at the hotel to highlight the major issues we face with the OTAs and how Hotel Bonanza is addressing those issues. So first of all, the high commissions. I couldn't believe how much money the hotel was being expected to pay on commissions, and thought it was outrageous that properties were paying sort of a minimum of 15% or an average of 15% per booking. Nowadays, 15% is at the lower end of the scale, and properties can pay up to 25 or even 30%. The problem for us was that our hands were tied. We couldn't just stop selling with the OTAs. Especially as we were a small independent hotel with a limited marketing budget, the way consumers were booking rooms was changing, and more of our bookings were coming from OTAs, and direct business was dropping. To highlight what we were up against, there were a couple of occasions when a guest already staying at the hotel wanted to extend their stay, but instead of calling down to reception and extending it direct with the hotel staff, they would sit in their room and book it via an online agent using the free Wi-Fi. So as the number of bookings we received from OTAs increased, the number of different agents we received them from decreased, and the majority of our bookings were coming from just two, Booking.com and Expedia. According to an article in Skift in July, by 2020, the Priceline Group, which owns Booking.com, and its main competitor, Expedia, will control 94% of the online booking market. The majority of the properties we've spoken to have all said the same thing. They're really angry, they're resentful at the amount of commission they have to pay, but that they don't feel they have any choice, they don't feel that there's any alternative. And many properties tell us that 80 to 90% of all their online bookings come from Booking.com. So our solution, we want to bring down commission rates and make a commitment to keep them down. So we will offer a fixed rate of 8% commission, which is a huge drop from what the majority of accommodation providers pay at the moment. Just to give you an example. So, of course, comparison, if you take say, an average hotel price of £100 per night, average commission of 15%, which equals £15 per booking. If booked with Hotel Bonanza, it's going to be 8%, £8 per booking, saving of 47% or £7 per room per night. But to take that over a year, if you're thinking of an average property size of 50 rooms, average annual occupancy of 80%, that could total a saving of more than £100,000 per year. So, the high commissions are tough, but the costs don't stop there. And another major one being the property's position in the search results ranking. Everybody wants a high ranking, and of course it's not possible for everybody to have a high ranking, but there's only one way to get one, and that is by paying yet more commission. It all comes down to money. If you're prepared to pay enough money, then you will be high in the search rankings. There are supposedly other factors involved, such as conversion rates, but if you don't want to pay higher commissions and you're already down the list, then there's a limit to what you can do. Plus, personally, I think it's misleading and ethically dubious to tell consumers that properties are preferred when in reality they're just paying more money for the privilege. So our solution is quite simple. We will not charge more money for properties to be ranked higher in the search results. We will use an algorithm that places a much higher emphasis on the property's proximity to the search location combined with other factors, including price. We think it's very important to be absolutely transparent with properties and consumers, as currently there is a lot of mystery surrounding OTAs and their algorithms. Reviews. most properties get a mixture of good and bad reviews. Some get more good than bad, some more bad than good. That is to be expected. However, sometimes reviews can be untrue, inaccurate, or simply malicious. And there were occasions for us when the review was left describing a hotel that wasn't even ours. One example was a customer that left a review describing a dark and dingy hellhole manned by rude staff, and where they were given a room overlooking a noisy nightclub that didn't close until 3 a.m. When they complained, they were told that they had to walk half a mile up the road to an even dingier set of apartments that were covered in mold and mouse droppings. Well, our hotel was located on a quiet residential street with no nightclub in sight, and we didn't even have any apartments. So clearly the review was incorrect, and it should have been really easy to have had it taken down, but it wasn't. It took months of pressure until finally the review was removed, but at that point it was just the words that were removed, not the score. So we won't work like that. We want to have a genuine and honest review system that consumers trust, but one that properties feel that if they can prove the review is not true, that it will be taken down. We do appreciate that there's a fine balance and that it's very hard to please everybody. But if you can't get a review removed when it's clearly about a different hotel, then there's something wrong with the system. On to rate parity. Rate parity is a nightmare for properties. Things are beginning to change, but properties still have to agree not to sell any cheaper on their own website. It's not healthy when OTAs have so much power that they can demand this. We had a couple of instances when we received what can only be described as a threatening email saying that they'd found a discrepancy between our website and their website, and that we had to adjust the prices immediately. I mean, it was a simple mistake, and even though we just explained this, we were told in no uncertain terms that if it happened again, then we would be dropped to the bottom of the search rankings. We don't think that OTAs should ask for rate parity, and it's simply not nice to receive threatening emails. So we have removed the entire rate parity clause from our terms and conditions, as we don't think it fits with our ethos of transparency and fairness. Plus, I think properties should be allowed to sell for whatever price they like on their own website and for whatever price they like on our website. One of the main challenges we have faced has been connections to channel managers. We've had to balance the signing up with properties with connecting with channel managers. Channel managers are companies that allow properties to update their rates and availability in one place rather than on multiple extranets. And understandably, they save properties a lot of time and money, and they're very important nowadays. We expected it to be a problem. We expected it to be a challenge, but nothing could have prepared us quite for how difficult it has been. One example I can give without naming any names was a channel manager that actually approached us a few months ago and said, look, we've had a lot of demand and we would like to, connect with you. And we agreed and signed a contract that was free, that we would be doing all the development work. And then before we actually began working on the connection, a new commercial director contacted us to say that he would like to have a chat to me about Hotel Bonanza. And then after half an hour on the phone, he explained that he thought we were doing a great thing and that they would love to connect with us, and he was going to put a business proposal together. Well, a week later, he did email me finally, telling me that there was no proposal. It was just that we'd have to pay £7,500 connection fee, and that it would be €2,500 a year, which would be absolutely fine, but it's the whole way through. It's been incredibly difficult to balance the two. Fortunately, there have been many properties that are recognise the obvious benefit of being with Hotel Bonanza, so their pressure combined with our pressure has got many channel manager connections nearly complete. One of the main reasons that we decided to go ahead with Hotel Bonanza was obvious demand from the industry during our extensive research period. There was clearly a huge appetite for a lower commission rate and a fairer way of doing things. And the positive response has only strengthened as we've got closer to our consumer launch. There are a few examples on the screen, but we've been bowled over by the strength of feeling behind what we're doing and feel quite enthused by it. Now I'm going to talk about the consumers and how we plan to bring them to our site and keep them there. The main question I am asked is, how are we going to compete with the big names and their multi-billion-pound marketing budgets? Well, the answer is that we won't, and we won't try to start with. Certainly not in the world of PPC, because they would swallow us up in seconds. There are many other channels that we're going to use to get our message across of a better deal for everybody, and our main message will be our Bonanza membership. The idea behind our Bonanza membership is to give consumers a reason to keep coming back. We will offer them a 5% discount on every property that they book for an annual fee of £10. Yes, there are many other loyalty schemes out there, and some offering a higher discount and some that are free. So why do we think our membership will work? Well, the Bonanza membership will give a discount on every property we have on our site, not just a select few, and that's because we pay for the discount, not the properties. Anybody who spends more than £200 per year on booking accommodation online will make a saving if they buy a Bonanza membership, and they will get the full range of properties to choose from as well. One thing I've always found frustrating about discounts is that they often do not apply to the things you really want. And a lot of properties have said they would actually like to sell cheaper with us because we don't ask for rate parity and our lower commission rate, and that will be an extra benefit for our Bonanza members. So we know the size of the task we face to get a foothold into the incredibly competitive online booking market. We're not expecting it to happen overnight, but there's a massive appetite for this among accommodation providers, and I believe that our strong, clear message, coupled with our great look and a simple user experience, will be enough to build up our reputation as an OTA that consumers want to use. We want to offer ourselves as a credible alternative to Booking.com and Expedia, an alternative that has transparency and fairness at its core. Thank you.
Oh, lovely, thank you. Thank you, Susie. Your business model is very exciting. I'm sure there'll be people who want to ask you questions about that. But one thing you mentioned was trust and reviews, which is a lovely segue into you, Sar. Let's welcome Sar from Filter.
Thank you. Hi, thank you. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here, and I really enjoy the panel, so I'm looking forward to the discussion afterwards. My name is Sal Sike. I'm VP of R&D in Filter. Just a few words about our company. Filter is a startup. It was founded 2.5 years ago, early 2014, in Tel Aviv, in Israel. We have lots of great news in the last few months. 2 months ago, we won first place in a G Startup competition in the Silicon Valley. It's a global competition with thousands of startups. We've won first place and 250K investment. Then we finished our round A investments. It was just announced 2 days ago when one of our leading investors is a senior C-level in Samsung, other is an IP expert. So we're in a very exciting point in time, stage. A little bit about myself. I'm a VP of R&D, so I'm in research and development. I'll talk to you a little bit about data, so I don't know if it's unfortunate or good for you that I'm into data. We'll find out. My expertise is in algorithms, in natural language processing and machine learning, and we'll talk about that and how this can be used to take social networks and turn them into trust, into reliable content. This is what Filter is all about. So a little bit about the space we're in. Filter is a technology company. It's not only about travel. Travel is one of the verticals that we're into. I'll talk about a case study which is specific for travel, but we operate in other verticals as well. And the general problem is the same in each and every vertical. All across verticals, the average conversion rate is around 2%. And although you spend so much money to bring visitors into the site, it's hard to push them to make the final decision and to finish their journey within your site. So we approach this problem, like many others do, but in a certain angle. We believe that one of the most important factors for a consumer to finish his journey within the website is trust and confidence. And trust can be built in many ways. You can have trust in a brand if you already know the brand and you've developed a relationship with the brand. But trust can be created, and nowadays it's more and more so, be created through content and through a platform. When we all go to Uber and we see the score of the driver, we count on the massive amount of reviews, on the algorithms that are behind that. Our trust is no longer necessarily to one brand, but more to the platform, to the sources of information, how they were gathered, and whether we can put our trust in them. But what are the sources of information that people trust? So we know that nowadays people share information constantly all of the time. They talk about everything. They post on Facebook, they post videos on YouTube, on Vine, which was recently closed, but on Facebook now as well. I'll talk about that later. They tweet, they send Snapchats and WhatsApp messages. And most of the interactions in the internet nowadays are in the social networks, not in designated sites. And this is a very major change in the way that people both post content and are used to trust content. Because, for example, we have reviews on Booking.com, we have reviews on TripAdvisor, we have Yelp. Those are platforms that are around the topic, that are around travel, that are around restaurants, that are around a specific type of content. But people are used to share not based on the topic, but based on the medium. If they have photos, they go on Instagram. If they have videos, they go on YouTube. If they have on Facebook, they do all of these as well. In Twitter, if they have something short to write, they want to interact with their audience based on the content they usually share. And this is where Filter comes. Okay, I'll just show you, just so you'll have a glimpse about the amount of content there is out there and where it is spread. So I'm sure you all know the Savoy here in London. In TripAdvisor, it has 1,600 reviews. In Booking.com, it's half of that, around 800. Expedia, I think, around 700. On Facebook, there are 50,000 reviews. But this is not the real number. This is only the number of reviews in the Facebook page of the Savoy. When our algorithms collect mentions, which are not specifically on the page, everyone who mentioned the Savoy London, we have hundreds of thousands of different mentions. If you take it together with Instagram posts, with YouTube posts, I just couldn't put it on the screen. Another important point to notice is what kind of content is being shared. On TripAdvisor, on Booking, when you review a hotel, you share your experience in a very specific context. Usually, either you were asked to review, hopefully they verified that you reviewed, but more than that, you'll usually, either if it was a very good experience, you feel like you want to compliment the hotel. If it was a very bad experience, you feel you have to warn others to do that. These are the incentives. When you go on a vacation and you share on Facebook or on Instagram, you share with your friends spontaneously. You want to present your experience not only within the hotel, with the interaction with the hotel staff or the room itself, the atmosphere around it. It's a different kind of content, and it gives you different kind of information, which is not less important than a well-written review. It gives you social validation regarding not only what people say about the product, or in this case, what people say about the hotel, but what the hotel says about the people in it, how the people who are there look. You can, if you are looking at social information, you can see that a certain hotel that maybe had very good reviews, you can see the faces of the people, and everyone there are 18 to 20. Maybe if you're 50, it's not the kind of the hotel you're looking for, or vice versa. The problem is that all of this information is scattered, and you can't really have it all in one place. More than that, the amount of it, the graph that I showed you earlier, is overwhelming. And to make our decisions, we don't want to be overwhelmed with information. We want a variety of sources, but we want them organized. Excuse me. So this is exactly what we've developed in Filter. We've developed a unique algorithm that takes into account, first of all, harvests information from all the social media networks, review sites as well, every piece of user-generated content, but also forum discussions, blogs, wherever there is user-generated content. But we analyze each and every mention, both for the metadata and for the content itself. So we use a combination of machine learning algorithms to take into account the user itself, himself, and the amount of posts he's sharing, the engagement that he gets from his friends, together with natural language processing analysis of the content itself, of the sentiment of it, of the distribution of sentiment within it, of the grammatical structure of the vocabulary. Combining these two aspects can give us a score of how relevant a mention is for someone who really wants to make a decision regarding the hotel or a product. So, first thing we do to organize the information is for each mention, after we filter out commercial, spam, malicious mentions, because one of the things that we found out, just a quick overview, one of the things that we found out was that the most helpful mentions aren't the good ones and not the bad ones. There are those that the sentiment is being distributed within, distributed within the mention. So if someone writes both good and bad things, those are the most engaging mentions, and those who will really push people to take actions, because they both trust the positive content because it contains also negative parts. So analyzing all these mentions using sentiment analysis, we come up with one score. This is the most summarized version of the content for each hotel. Then, when we're integrated into a site, so when a client is interested, just push the button and sees our curated feed, which shows the most engaging pieces of content that I've just discussed, together with photos and videos. And the final outcome is this. As you can see, a curated feed, the photos and videos tab. We have our own tag mechanism, which allows the user to filter the results more based on his or her needs, to learn about the Wi-Fi, the service, whether it's good for couples or business. Our algorithms automatically detect the different topics of discussion regarding each and every hotel. I want to share with you a case study that we've done with an OTA based in Florida. It's specific for the travel industry, of course. What we've done was to integrate into the site, so our content was available next to each and every hotel, both in search results and in the product pages. This is something which is really interesting. We've measured the engagement with each and every mention based on the source it came from. The reason that you don't see exact details of the unit is because it changes the time on site. The time of engagement changes due to the design, to the UX. So we compared it only relative over different types of UX that we've tried. And we've seen that while regular reviews from Booking, from Expedia, also from Agoda, TripAdvisor, we put everything in the same basket. When they had around 1 unit of engagement, usually it's 5 seconds, tweets had around 1.4, Facebook had almost twice, 1.9. A Facebook post which contains media had more than twice the engagement time of a usual review. But Instagram and YouTube were the most engaging and capturing. Although they didn't exactly have what you're used to see as a review, they gave much more information and much more meaningful information for those who want to make a decision. And for the results themselves, we made a test that for 8 months, 50% of the site's visitors were exposed to the site as is, and 50% were exposed to the site containing filters content. And what we saw was that combining all of the sources of information for one place, which is what we've done in this case study, really has a huge impact. We started, what you can see is the number of sessions in the more bold colors, and in the more distant colors, you can see the average time on site. This is the important factor. You see that over the time, in the beginning, we've seen around 20 to 25% increase in the average time on site within the site. As our algorithms grew more and more accurate and the machine learning algorithm went into paste, we've seen it grow and reach almost 80% increase in time on site, which is a huge impact for a single element within a site. But more than that, overall, over the entire course of the 8 months, we can see that not only that the average time on site, average session duration went up in 48%. We see that the number of pages per session have increased and the bounce rate have been reduced by 50%. All of this came to one important factor. People spend more time on site, they are more engaged, they can make their final decision within the site. And this is exactly what we've seen. Over the course of 8 months, the conversion rate have increased in almost 40%, in 39.5%. That's the average for the entire duration. It began with 10%, and we've reached almost 60% by the end of the experiment. So we've seen that content and trustworthy content has lots of impact on people finally making a decision and staying within your platform to do that. I wanted, because we don't have any more time, I wanted to elaborate a bit more about how you can find malicious reviews and take them away, but maybe we'll do it later in the discussion. Feel free to talk to me later if you want. That's my email. If you have any questions, if you want assistance, we're always looking for partnerships. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sal. Fascinating stuff, but we want to be able to take questions, so thank you for finishing there. Susie, question for you on Slido. What are the biggest challenges that you face when launching Hotel Bonanza?
Well, as I think I touched on, the biggest challenge of all has been the channel manager connections. It's been really very tricky because it's a balancing act. When we first started signing up properties, no one knew who we were, and for the properties they say, "Oh, that's great, but are you with our channel manager?" And then we go to the channel manager and we say, "Oh, can we connect with you? And they say, yeah, but we'd like to know how many properties you have on board. And it's been a real chicken and egg situation the whole way through. We are really far down the road connecting with a few of the biggest channel managers now, and we expect to have about between 5 and 10 connections in place by the time we go live. But it has been by far the biggest challenge we've faced, yeah.
Okay, fine. Thank you for that. Who'd like to ask a question live with a microphone? Anyone at all? Gosh, yes, there we are. So keep your hand up so a microphone can come round. Just while it's arriving, let me ask you the question that's on screen here, Carl, which was, you're offering a personal service. I'll ask you the question. You're offering a personal service. Do you find that you're using web chat at all in communication with your customers?
It's not something we use a lot. I mean, again, I think it's linked to transaction volume and cultural differences. I mean, 60 to 70% of our guests are coming from, America, the Far East, Australia. So we want to obviously have a conversation with them about the particular needs they have and understand that. And it's also sometimes more easy for people to, if English isn't their first language, to sort of speak to someone than perhaps have a web chat. But I don't think there's any reason I would oppose it. It just doesn't work for our business.
No, and in fact, there might be time zone issues, as you say. That's a good point. Yes, so let's take a question. Perhaps you can tell us who you are, where you're from.
My name is Ben Hopkins. I'm from City Cruises. I hope you can hear this through the microphone. And it's a question for Filter, which looks very interesting. So thank you. Regarding, am I right in thinking that you're republishing snippets of social media?
Excuse me?
Well, first
yes,
of all,
your created content, is that content that you've taken from YouTube and from Facebook, and you're republishing it?
Yes, what we do is we collect all of the publicly shared posts, either from YouTube, from Facebook, from Twitter, and we gather them, we analyze them, and then choose the most engaging. This process is always being updated and changed on a daily basis.
And obviously, on the whole, and perhaps unfortunately, many of us have sort of signed away our own copyright over any of this media. But what about the big social media organizations like Google and Facebook or whoever? Are they happy about the sort of taking and republishing? Because I feel they're becoming generally a bit more restrictive about what they allow to be published.
Actually, this is something that started and changed and then changed into the other direction. Twitter had a fire hose, then they pulled it down, they pulled it up back again. I think this is something that constantly changes. Right now, it is available through public APIs. For example, YouTube pushes, wants you to share and embed their content as much as possible. Facebook have opened embedding options for posts as well. And I think that part of where it leads is that, like the YouTube model is that people make money from their content. And I think that this is something that is going to be pushed into other social networks as well. Right now, it's all available through public APIs, and you can embed this content when it's public, of course. No private content.
So there are no copyright issues then of repurposing that content or redisplaying that content?
At the moment, no, but this is something that is constantly changing.
Because if there was, so wouldn't that kill your business if that changes?
For example, as I said, YouTube, for example, the way that their model works is that they want it to be embedded everywhere. So we're now actually starting to negotiate with the social networks to make sure that this is the direction that...
Excellent. Okay. Thank you. Another question. Thank you for that. Anyone else have a question? Carl, let me ask you a question, if I may. Some of you will know that Carl's got quite a long experience in the world of online travel, because you ran a Podo for a while, you ran Generator Hostels, and that's just the ones I can think of right now. But you're with Vive.com now. Vive's a new startup business. And unlike the old days when Priceline, when it kicked off, was able to raise, was it $15 million funding? Something like that. Very handy for marketing purposes. That kind of money is not available. How do you go about marketing a new business like Vive and getting some visibility out there?
Well,
apart from talking to us.
I think there is still money out there. You just have to look a little bit harder and make your case more persuasively as to why you're distinctive. I think we are seeing a lot of changes in the travel sector. I mean, we haven't, what we've seen actually in this very interesting presentation on social media is the role of machine learning and AI in terms of informing choices. There's a lot of money chasing AI at the moment, I know that. Equally, a business like Vive is a startup. It's only in one city.
AI is artificial intelligence.
Artificial intelligence,
yes,
which will become a huge driver of how we start to make decisions in the travel industry in the next 5 to 10 years. But I think businesses like Vive, are sort of have a great zeitgeist about them. They are relevant for today's consumer, which is becoming much more discerning, much more influenced by what friends say, much more interested in the price and availability issues, looking at all those facets, much more informed than they were even 5 or 10 years ago. So any businesses that taps into that, I think, is going to get funding. And certainly, Vive will not struggle to expand into other cities.
Okay, fine. That's good to know. Another question, anybody? Susie, let me ask you a question. Oh, sorry, one just come up on the screen for you, Sar. It says, do customers have to have an account with you or actively seek your website to see the overall scores? I'm assuming that rather like Review and others, that you will make an API available so that if I'm selling hotel accommodation or electric power drills, I can incorporate your content into my website?
Yes, exactly. We're a B2B solution, so our clients are in the travel industry, either OTAs or any website that has hotels or attractions and want to integrate our data into it. It's simply integrating one simple line of code and you're good to go. And the website is already enhanced with our data. We're not going B2C and offering our solution directly to clients at the moment.
Okay. Susie, so a question from me to you. I think everyone within World Travel Market, unless Booking.com and Expedia have stands here, will think that what you're doing is just fantastic. It's a wonderful business model as far as we're all concerned. But you're actually taking on some very powerful competitors. Have you thought about the kind of competitive response that you might get from them and how you might counter that?
Well, the point of our website is that the idea is that we want to get accommodation providers on board, and it's all about volume. So if we can get, by the time that we want to be worldwide by 2018, and the next year is going to be about scaling really quickly. So we don't intend to really give Booking.com and Expedia that much opportunity. We want to get out there really quickly. And so we've had such an amazing response. And although I say, okay, we've had more than 6,000 properties sign up already, that might seem like an incredibly small number in comparison to what Booking.com have on their site, which I think is, over 1 million. It is all about getting these channel manager connections in place, getting live. And in the 6 months between when we go live to the summer, we will be scaling really, really quickly. And once we intend to up the number of properties on our site considerably in that time. And I think that if we have the accommodation providers on board with us and with us, then we've got a real chance. And I mean, Booking.com aren't going to cut their margins. They're not going to cut their commission costs. They're not going to. We have. We say we're going to charge 8% commission. It is going to stay at 8% commission. We want to have 1 million Bonanza members within 5 years. That's our aim. So I don't really, I'm not sure exactly what they're going to do. In the next 6 months we'll find out.
You'll be ready for it.
Yeah,
okay.
We're ready for them.
So, ladies and gentlemen, 3 new businesses that hopefully they'll come back in 5 years and be 3 old businesses. Let's thank Carl, Susie, and Sarah very much for a great session. Thank you, guys. And thank you all for your attention over the last couple of hours. It's been great to have you here. If you do want copies of the presentations, just leave your business cards at the door. That'll be lovely.